Rescue Plan Act, discussion or action regarding the eligible expenses and our funding guidelines, reporting requirements and funding request. Okay.
So I'm Fiona Bond, Executive Director of Creative Waco, and of course this is Shane Turner, owner and operator of the Hippodrome.
All right, so we will recess until 1 o'clock tomorrow. So it's 11. All right, good morning. Let's call court to order. Today is Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. It's 9 a.m. Proof of posting, please.
The agenda was posted on Friday, February 25th, 2022 at 3:10 p.m.
Thank you. And if anyone has a public comment, they can come forward now from the audience. Yes, sir.
My name is Shannon Caraway. I'm Vice President for Business Development for a company called Solar Prime. Currently, we're trying to develop another 300 megawatt solar farm and 300 megawatt battery energy storage project here in McLennan County. And it's out north of Trading House Creek Reservoir, that area there. We're preparing to submit a proposal to this body soon for a county tax abatement for the project, and just wanted to stop by ahead of time, introduce ourselves, and tell you what we're doing.
Going to D on proclamations, resolutions. We have nothing this week. Under E, under consent agenda, I have no recommended pulls. Does anyone else have a pull from the consent agenda they want to discuss? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Any other discussion? Discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pass. All right, Dustin.
Yes, sir. Judge, if we could go to item N1, this is discussion and or action on matters regarding COVID-19.
These case numbers have decreased for the hospitals.
All right, Judge, do you want to accept that for recording purposes?
Yes, is there a motion to accept that report for recording purposes?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? No other discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pass.
All right, if we could go to item N10, presentation from Texas State Technical College regarding Central Texas Industrial Training Center.
There's a mismatch between the number of jobs that are available and the number of people that are available to fill those positions.
Move to accept for recording purposes. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? No other discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pass.
All right, if we could go to item N6, this is the Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce Monthly Economic Development Report for January 2022.
Know that we have had one project announcement for this first quarter, and that was in McGregor with Messer.
All right, if there's no questions, or a motion to approve the chamber report for recording purposes?
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion second. Any other discussion? No other discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Pass.
All right, we can go back up to item F, budget amendments. F1 is regarding the FY22 budget. Francis?
FY22 budget amendments, starting with F1A.
Is there a motion to approve F1D through F1I?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion second. Any other discussion? No other discussion.
Press.
Call court to order. Today is March 7th, 2023, 9 a.m. Proof of posting, please.
The agenda was posted on Thursday, March 2nd, 2023 at 4:15 p.m.
Thank you. This time, let's stand briefly for a moment of silence, and then we'll have the pledge to the flags.
Everyone, please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, if there's any members of the audience that want to speak to the court on business matters, please do so at this time. Come forward. If you would, this is a recorded proceeding, so if you'll sit right here and introduce yourself. Yes, ma'am. Give your name and address. And limit our comments to about 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Kay Bell, and I'm president of the Texas National Women in Agriculture Association. My home address is 810 Penton Lane, Bellmead, Texas. And I'm coming today because we have agriculture groups in McLennan County. We have several black farmers that have increased in McLennan County. And at this point, we do not have a Prairie View agricultural extension agent for McLennan County. I have inquired to Prairie View why we don't, and they were told that there was not room in the AgriLife building. I did receive an email from Dr. Shane, whoever's over AgriLife, I'm not real sure. And he informed me that there was a room, but the interns are using that room. And we, as a former retired teacher, I was kind of insulted one day he said that, because as a former retired teacher, whenever you have a student teacher, you don't give them an office, you give them a chair or you give them a desk at the back of the room. You don't give them the entire room. So he informed me by the email that they have intern, but they don't have room for Prairie View A&M ag extension agents. So I am requesting from the county, because we have an increase of black farmers, young black farmers who are growing things and trying to eliminate the food desert that has been stagnated for East Waco, that we have a Prairie View ag extension agent. Now, they told me they have a Prairie View A&M nutritious agent that's in Falls County that takes care of McLennan County. That is nutrition. That is not an ag agent. So we're requesting that the county will provide an office. If not at the Agri office on Cobbs, then provide the Prairie View ag extension agent an office somewhere in Waco. That's my request.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, this court supports agriculture. It's an important part of McLennan County. Our ag income for the county is very significant, and I think that's something for us to be proud of. We've got a lot of fertile land in this area with the Brazos River bottom and all the other areas that farming and ranching takes place. And so thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. We will work with the county extension agent to figure out how we can expand this program to primarily headquarters in McLennan County. And so there is a space issue, but we'll look at that. We're in charge of the space, so that's a good part.
I know we can't respond to comments made during the public speaking, but I just wanted to kind of first thank you for the comments. I remember when I first came to McLennan County back in the mid-90s, that we did have a Prairie View Ag Extension agent, Miss Marie Rasmus, and she worked until she retired. I was trying to think of the last ag agent that I met. It might have been Miss Charles, I'm not sure, but I know we've had one. And I know with the two large high schools that we have here, Waco High and University, I agree with you. I think it's worth a discussion and looking into it further.
Well, and I think also making sure that our outreach all across the county to the young people to get involved in agriculture and through 4-H or through high school FFA is a great way for people to really understand and connect to agriculture, how food is grown, while along the way learning responsibility. And there's a great opportunity for scholarships around that program as well. So we will definitely look into how we can do more and more. We're doing a lot of good things, and there's no reason, there's no limit to it really. So we can look at expanding that. Thank you. All right. Anyone else to speak to the court on business matters? All right. Seeing none, we would go to under the consent agenda. Is there any proclamations or resolutions? I don't see any, and I don't believe anyone let us know that they would call in for comments. Is that true?
Just Ms. Bell.
Okay. All right, and then in regards to the consent agenda, recommended pulls are HR under E3A, HR matter of the 170th District Court, and then E3B is HR matter for the county sheriff. Are there any other recommended pulls under the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of those pulls previously mentioned?
So moved. Second.
Have motion second. Any other discussion? No other discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pass. All right, I'd like to go to item, and I will have to be excused before this court's over with, but in my absence, Commissioner Perry will take over the gavel. But I want to get to a couple of items if we can. And one is under N2A1. This is discussion or action on request for waiver of penalties and interest on property taxes. So I'd like to ask Mr. Scott Work to come up, and then online, of course, we have Dustin Chapman, County Administrator, and Mike Dixon, County Attorney. So good morning.
Good morning, Judge. Kathy Holloman is also here.
Okay, hello, Kathy, yes.
If you have any factual questions about the
Right.
individual cases.
Right.
I have brought copies, waive penalties and interest pursuant to statute, and if I could, I'll pass these around. As we've previously discussed in this court, Section 33.011 of the Texas Property Tax Code allows for the waiver of penalties and interest upon a written application by the taxpayer, as long as they meet certain conditions of the code. And I just want to briefly go over those with y'all again. 33.011A1 allows for the waiver of penalties and interest if an act or an omission of an officer or employee agent of the taxing unit or the appraisal district in which the taxing unit participates either caused or resulted in the taxpayer's failure to pay the tax before the delinquency. This portion of the statute also requires that the taxpayer make the delinquent tax payment on or before the 21st day after the date the taxpayer knew or should have known of the delinquency. Most of the requests that are before you today, however, fall under 33.011 Section J, and that deals with an individual who has evidence sufficient to show that they actually delivered payment for the tax before the delinquency date, which would have been a delivery of the payment on or before January 31st of this year. They have to have evidence sufficient to show that they mailed or delivered payment to the United States Postal Service, but an act or omission of the Postal Service resulted in the taxpayer's payment being postmarked after the delinquency date, or they could give it to a private delivery service for delivery. But again, an act or omission of that private carrier has to result in the taxpayer's payment being received by the taxing unit after the delinquency date. Most of the cases that are submitted to you today fall under that 33.011J. And Ms. Holloman is here if you have any factual questions about those individual requests.
All right. Okay, I think, Kathy, one thing that you might, I think a question will come up, and y'all have explained this before, but I think just for the purpose of this discussion today, this time, on the day that the tax office the decision was made to close because of ICE and those kind of things for the safety of the employees, what kind of notifications went out to people to let them know that this was happening?
Well, anything that the county officially put out, as well as it was on the Facebook page of the tax office, and it was, and Tommy Witherspoon with KWTX did a piece on it, and so I know a lot of people are set up for notifications for KWTX. There was not a press release, but and then the website, the county said that we were closed.
Right.
Before you could even get to our webpage. And then when you got to our webpage, you were given a number of options to pay.
Okay.
Online or via telephone.
Right. And those suggestions are put out there many times on all the ways to pay. So people, for the convenience of the taxpayers.
Well, and it's on the tax bills as well. The 1-800 number to call, as well as the
Online.
pay online link to pay. And it does ask for a bureau code, and that's all of that is on the tax bill.
And whether the doors are closed or not, the drop box is always available to.
One next to the door in the building, and then a drive-by one out in the parking lot that we added just last year. It's out near Washington Avenue.
Okay.
And Judge, just for the record, the phone number to the tax office was working that day. And if you called the phone number, just as always, there is an option where you can select and pay your tax bill over the phone. That part of the system was working that day. And so if an individual tried to call the tax office to address the issue, they would have been given the option to pay over the phone, as well as the drop box being available and the online payment option as well.
Okay.
Also, I'd like to add that on the 2nd, we had 316 walk-in accounts come in to pay. That was all we had on the 2nd, as far as processed inside the office. And then with
So what's that relative to? I mean, is that a lot or less or what?
Well, it's out of about 1 million parcels in the county.
Okay.
So it's a tiny percentage. Also, we emptied, so as you know, we had delayed opening on the 2nd, and we emptied the drop boxes at approximately 10 a.m. on the 2nd, and everything in the drop boxes was processed as being timely. And with regard to the postmark, when we began receiving mail, because we did not receive any mail the rest of the week that we were closed for ICE. We kept going to the post office, but they said, we don't have any. And so when we began receiving mail the next day, anything that came in where the taxpayer had walked into the Waco post office and received a hand stamp on the 30th or the 31st, we took as evidence that they had timely delivered it, even though the postmark said the 2nd, and those were processed as timely as well.
Okay. So an individual on the last day say, I need to, you know, whatever reason, I want to keep my money as long as I have to, as long as there's not a penalty, then they make that decision, they're gonna pay that day. If they choose to leave home, to go do that, they're driving past the post office. And if they drive past it, don't choose to use the stamp, then they get here, they're not turned back because there's 2 drop boxes that they can put the item into.
Correct.
So let's go back, before they leave home, if they say the road's too icy, I need to call down there, then there's all the options that are given to them. So then it limits the amount of people that are affected to those that maybe don't use credit cards or ways to do, or do not have internet access. And I think there was even one in here that the ICE had, their electricity went off and they didn't have internet access.
Right.
I believe on the phone, you can even give a check number, can't you, Kathy?
Say that again?
Can you give a check number on the phone?
You can do an e-check on the phone, and that's
Okay.
$1.50 charge rather than the 2.19% on the phone or internet.
So there is a almost 3% charge for the credit cards, correct?
If you use a credit card, but if you process it as an e-check instead of as a credit card, then it's $1.50. Also, I will say that the drop box in the parking lot does have a big sign that says no cash, please, because we don't want anyone
Right,
stealing the box
Yeah.
because they think there's cash in there.
yeah, right.
So legitimately, if someone only had cash, I think that, you know,
Okay,
in my opinion, that's a legitimate reason.
okay. So, we asked Dustin Chapman and Mike Dixon, and to confer with others, to make a list of those that we received so far, and there's gonna be more. This is just taking care of what we've got right now. There's already, I know at least a couple that's going on next meetings that we'll look at those too, but, you know, I feel like it's important to set the criteria today of what we'll be looking at in the future. So Mike and Dustin, whichever one, kind of tell us the criteria y'all looked at, in these recommendations.
Judge, we looked at what evidence was provided of, because most of them have to do with the Postal Service. And we looked at what evidence was provided of posting to the post office on the 31st or before. And we also looked at when the payment was received. And what we found was that in almost all the situations where somebody said they did place it with the post office on January 31st, it was received on February 2nd or 3rd, but primarily on the 2nd. So
It was
postmarked.
Postmarked.
I'm sorry, postmarked on the 2nd and received shortly thereafter. I'm sorry. So the postmark of the 2nd or 3rd kind of backs up that they did get it in on the 31st. There's some people that didn't identify when they put their payment in the mail, and that doesn't give us enough information. But there's some that went, you know, were very detailed, even given the post office that they went to, and the time and everything else, and, that they posted it on the 31st. And like I say, almost all of those are postmarked on the 2nd or 3rd.
Okay, so do y'all want to go over that list?
Yes, and so what I've done, I'm sharing my screen as we step through for the court to consider them on a case-by-case basis. So Judge, would you like for us to present all the requests first and then come back and make determinations?
Yes, I think that'd be a good way. Wait a minute,
No,
Commissioner
We've
Smith's
had a
got-
chance
Well,
to,
that'll
we've had a
be-
chance to see all these and read all these. Are we just going to go back over them again for? I think we have to by For the record, we have to take them individually?
We have to take them individually, and I think it'd be better just to get them
Why do we have
done
to take them individually, Mike?
because the way the statute reads, you're supposed to take them on a case-by-case basis.
Where do you see that in the statute?
Scott, can you help me there?
Yeah, the statute applies to individuals making a written application. And so that's where it would be inferred. It's not stated directly that you take it on a case-by-case basis in a setting like this. However, it does require a written application from an individual.
So we could infer in a motion that each of these had applied and do qualify, and we do waive penalties and fees.
That would be a question for Mike. I don't
Okay.
know that I know the law on what the court could make a motion on and infer.
Well, if we had, we'd come in understanding that probably we would do each one separately. But if we went through and we could go through the ones that we recommend to be granted, and you could make a motion on that and then do the denials, I guess. Scott, you have one version of the resolution that's that way, isn't it?
The resolutions were drafted so that the court can make individual decisions on each account.
Okay. That's fine.
Either by circling
That's
granted
fine.
or denied.
I'll defer to.
But, you know,
That's fine.
obviously,
Let me add in
I don't want to
our
direct how
order.
the court does its business.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me add in, the order that we passed on February 7th says that we're gonna go case by case.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so
Well,
let's
the
try
first
to be
one
as
is-
brief as we can, but go through those.
The first one is Alamo Steel LLC. They indicate they put it in the with the postal service on the January 31st. I believe it was postmarked on the 2nd. The check was processed on the 9th, but we feel like this provides enough information where the waiver should be granted, because it does indicate that it was posted with the post office on January 31st. It has a February 2nd postal date, and it says that it was the failure of the United States Post Office to postmark the payment as of January 31st, 2023. So our recommendation is that this one be granted, the waiver be granted.
Okay, what's the next one? Unless somebody has a question, we're gonna keep going through these, and then if anybody wants to pull one aside, we can. All right,
Next one is William Campbell.
Another one where he said that that he sent the payment before the required date, the required due date, and the tax payment was postmarked late, and that the U.S. Postal Service failed to pick up and deliver mail those dates. I believe this one, we also said that was enough
Yes.
to grant the waiver. Okay,
And Judd Griffiths is next.
Jed Griffiths has a lot of properties. This does indicate that, that the payments were posted at the post office at Wooded Acres, does indicate on January 31st. Unfortunately, the weather delays, the USPS didn't postmark these correct date. Almost all of the tax payments for his many properties were postmarked February 2nd, which indicates that they probably were posted on the 31st. There's 3 accounts where the postmark wasn't until February 21st. And that indicates that those may not have been posted by the 31st. So our recommendation is to approve all of his properties except 3, and those would be 2608 Woodrow Street, 1524 Maple Avenue, and 1526 Maple Avenue.
And that's with the same property owner?
Yes.
Okay, those don't fall within the 21-day guideline?
Oh, he paid within the 21 days his taxes,
Right, he paid them within the.
or else he wouldn't have been able to bring this application. But there's just something that's not amiss. There's something that's different because every other one shows a posting date or a postmark date of February 2nd. And then you have these other ones that are approximately 20 days later. So those 3, there was just a question there as to how they could have been put in at the same time and end up with a 21st postmark.
So on 33.011J, the requirement for evidence sufficient to ask for a waiver of penalties and interest goes to the postmark or the evidence of delivery only. Subsection J actually does not have a requirement that the payment be made within 21 days. It's different from the 33.
Oh, it's different from the
You did say
state.
originally that most of them were under J. But
Most
the
of these-
indication was most.
Most of these are under J, that's correct.
But could that be under 330111?
Well,
Knows or should know of the delinquency, 21st day, know or should know of the delinquency?
it could.
Well, there's no-
33.011A1 requires, there's 2 requirements on 33.011A. One is that there was an act of remission by the taxing entity or its agent, employees, et cetera. The second requirement is that the delinquent tax be paid on or before the 21st day after the taxpayer knew or should have known of the delinquency.
Right.
J does not have the requirement of 21 days.
Right.
J goes specifically to sufficient proof that the taxpayer delivered payment to the post office or a private carrier on or before the delinquency date.
And I understand that, Scott, but why wouldn't the 21st day, why couldn't they argue 330111? That because the office was closed and they paid it and they knew the delinquency and they paid it before the 21st day.
They never mentioned that. Anything about the closing, it's all about posting to the post office. Well, he does say I was unable to bring the checks directly to the McLennan County Tax Collector's office since it
And
was
I
closed.
don't want to comment on the evidence, but
But
That's
we
up to
have
Mike and Dustin.
outdoor, we talked about all the methods, and one of them is he could have dropped the checks in the outdoor box.
Yeah. I'm All right, go on. I'm not happy with that necessarily, but go ahead.
And I think what we have to be careful here is trying to think for them instead of just taking the facts that Dustin and Mike looked at. And
Well, they're inferring some things too. But, I mean, how much detail do they have to say if they met the 21-day requirement because the tax office was closed?
And I thought they had 21 days to pay, then.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
So that was my understanding.
I've asked
Well,
my
the
office
tax
to check
office
that.
being closed doesn't prevent them from paying though, because they could put it in the Dropbox or pay by any of the other methods, including.
But so are we just going to look
Each
at, okay, is our criteria just going to be that they dropped it off and it didn't get postmarked till the 2nd?
So there's two requirements under 1A, and that is that that there was an act or omission by the post office and that it was paid within 21 days. If they're proceeding or if the court's making the decision based upon subsection J, there is a requirement that they provide evidence that it was delivered to the post office or a private carrier on or before the delinquency date. That section does not require payment to be made within 21 days because presumably the payment already in the mail, but it was postmarked on the 2nd or whenever the post office could first get to it. And that, I wasn't there when they enacted the statute, but that, in my opinion, that's why the 21-day requirement is not in that part, is because it's assumed that it's already paid.
Okay.
But for some reason, it didn't get postmarked, but they have evidence to show that they delivered it. And I think that's the issue with the 3 that are postmarked on the 21st rather than postmarked on the 2nd. Because if they were dropped off on the 30th, presumably, and again, I don't want to comment on the evidence, but presumably if they were dropped off on the 31st in a stack, all of the ones that were postmarked the 2nd would be different than the 3 that are postmarked on the 21st.
I have a quick question, and maybe yours and maybe Mike's or Dustin's. During the discussion when we passed the order to allow for this process, it seems that you all centered around the fact that when you look at under 33.011, Section 1, when it says in which the taxing unit caused or resulted, and I'm just excerpting, caused or resulted in the taxpayer's failure to pay the tax before delinquency. And so for me, I kind of centered around, we were giving people coverage for when we were closed and they couldn't make it into the tax office. I didn't see it that we were giving them an additional 21 days to pay their taxes. But I could be wrong, so y'all explain it to me, that way. I'm thinking, we said if we were closed and you couldn't pay your taxes and you got them paid before the 21st day, I don't know how that factors in, but I thought we were giving them coverage that when we closed the tax office and you couldn't come in and pay your taxes, there's a process where you can come and have your interest and your penalties waived.
Well, but there were other ways at the tax office to pay, including the drop-offs and by phone, by internet. And, it's.
Right. So I guess, just kind of move along. When I looked at the list of people, and I know we're gonna go one by one, some of them, there were only 2 I had a question about. There were only 2, and that's the 3 that we're talking about now that were postmarked for February the 21st, and there was a pay in person that was dated February the 15th. It looks like everyone else pretty much got that first week of February as far as what's submitted in the packet.
Yeah, but they may not have identified when they put it in the mail. And that's an important part, is you have to identify that you put it in the mail on or before the delinquency date.
Under J.
Right.
Right. And I guess when we're talking about the courts, looking at how we can waive, I know if you mail it by the 31st, if it's postmarked the 31st, you are given the same consideration as if someone walked it in on the 31st.
Right.
For that reason, I was thinking, if we were letting people come, if we received things on the 2nd when we opened back up, and we didn't give them any type of penalty, then if they postmarked it by that date, they kind of get the same consideration that you do with the January 31st deadline. And I was just, because I was trying to kind of rationalize in my head the ones that I may approve and then the ones I may deny. So I was trying to give myself a system.
I guess I see it just that the ones that actually took it to the post office or put it in their mailbox, they made that effort to pay it on or before the 31st. Whereas those others may have waited until the 2nd. So, and I think it really just comes down to, it's a determination by the court if under 330111, it specifically is closing the tax office with the other methods of payments available. Is that enough to have caused the people to be delinquent in their taxes? I think that's what it boils down to. And so it's really a court determination. If that's enough, that by closing and they still had those available options, but if the court determines that that was enough to force the people to be delinquent, then then it's easy to grant them. But with the other options, that's kind of the lens Mike and I reviewed them under, was just sticking to the statute and trying to look at the info they provided to us and say, yes, it either fits or it does not. So,
and primarily with the postal, because the reality is there was a drop off. There were other options, including telecheck or e-check to pay before the deadline. And, so it's, and a lot of them didn't even indicate that they'd come down there or had thought about coming down there. They had just posted their check in the mail. And
I think ultimately, Commissioner Smith, what we're dealing with here is this body, the Commissioners Court, you would have the evidence before you, and ultimately y'all are the finders of fact. And as Dustin said, if this court determines that the mere act of closing the tax office on January 31st and February 1st is what caused or resulted in that taxpayer's failure to pay, then that's a decision y'all can make. The evidence is is before you, and you can decide whether or not the other options available to those people is evidence that may tend to show that there were other options available, and so that closing the office did not cause the payment to be late because they had other options, or you could go the other way. Ultimately, y'all are the finder of facts in this decision.
Okay, so we started down this road of going one by one, and we get bogged down. So if we could move forward with those, and then if there's certain criteria that the court does questions, we can, like item J or whatever, then we can come back and say, if we don't agree with the criteria based on this, then who would qualify at that point, and then we go back and make the final approval. So,
May I
Kathy,
add?
yeah,
The check date on the ones that were postmarked 2/21 is 2/13. So they do not fall under J. They would have to fall under the other.
A1.
A1.
Which ones? Which one?
The three under Griffiths with the 2/21 postmarks.
Right.
They were not placed in the
And those
U.S.
are-
Postal Service on January 31st because the checks are dated the 13th.
right. So there's clearly effort was not there on those.
Right.
And,
I
and
just
those
had
are,
that information
those are
right now.
ones that are identified as, by this, Dustin and Mike, not to reimburse on those.
Right.
So Dustin, go, you or Mike, move forward, please.
All right, the next one is William Bill Henry.
Yes, I think on this one, he is stating that the county tax office was closed. And he waited till it reopened to come in and pay. But it doesn't indicate why he didn't post it to the post office or that why he didn't use one of the other methods available at the tax office itself. Dustin, do you have anything to add to that?
No, he just stated he tried to pay the taxes, but because of inclement weather, the tax office was closed. So we didn't feel like that was enough information. It did not fit under J because nothing with the post office, but then with the other available options, we didn't feel like it would be one that would qualify.
So I spoke to Mr. Henry, and I may have out of line on this, and let me know if I am. He normally pays in person every year. So that was that's what I remember about our conversation. And so
That's certainly evidence that y'all can consider.
All right.
Well, and the other thing that, may cut against our decision a little bit is that he made a hybrid payment. He made a credit card payment of $24.64 and a check payment of $2,000. That may have been difficult to pull off but he could have done it on the internet. He could have done it by the phone, but the credit card payment would have had to be online. So all it says really is that the tax office was closed. When it reopened, I was charged for paying late. It
So
doesn't.
Did he drive here and saw it was closed and left?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then
So he paid at the West office on February 3rd.
Oh, West.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the day of opening either.
And the West office has a drop box as well, right?
It's not dedicated to the tax office, but there is a slot in the door that people use for property tax
Right.
and for communication with the court.
So in normal course of business, it is used to pay taxes?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
The next one is Shirley Hill. And Mike, I can start into it. So this is one on the 31st, stated the tax office was closed. As soon as her son felt it was safe to drive, he took his and her tax payment to the China Spring Post Office, so they'd be postmarked on the 31st. And then it looks like his was postmarked correctly, potentially. She just says county received his on the 1st and mine on the 2nd, creating a past due status for mine. So this is one we felt it was timely delivered to the post office, and due to the late postmark date, we feel like this is one that we would recommend for approval.
Okay.
Leandra Humphreys is the next one. This is a kind of a series of unfortunate events. She was waiting to receive her paycheck on the 30th, then tried to make payment on the 31st. Driveway was iced over, so she couldn't get out and lives on a steep hill. Tried calling the tax office, closed due to the ice storm. Internet was down due to the storm, so could not make the payment. And then on February 1st, as soon as her internet got back up and working, she did make the payment. And Kathy did confirm that she did pay it for both her home and her business via online payment on February 1st. And so this is one that's really, it is a gray area. A lot of the available opportunities couldn't get out of her driveway. Her internet was down, and then she did log in the next morning and make the payment. So
It looks like she tried numerous options but she didn't have many options because she couldn't do it electronically or drive either one. So,
Right.
The,
We at first didn't, it seemed a little bit incredible, but it's a toss up,
So what,
All right, then move.
So what are you recommending?
Well, I mean, I think we had originally said there wasn't enough proof, but after rereading it, I would think that if you believed everything she said, which we're kind of stuck doing to some extent, that it could be proved. What about you, Dustin?
Yes, I think, and especially after with the tax office note that she did pay him on February 1st, and she tried to make that payment on the 31st, if we do believe everything in the letter, that we would recommend it for approval.
Okay, does anybody have a problem with putting that over into the category of waive? Anybody have a problem with that?
Well, she did a good job of putting a lot of evidence.
Yeah.
there,
Yeah, okay.
Effort.
All right, move forward.
All right, moving on to Dan and Angie Johnston. This is one, they intended to drive downtown to pay our taxes in person on the 31st versus mailing such a large amount. Says, I think we agree, all agree no one wants to pay taxes any sooner than we are required to. Tax office was closed on the 31st, the first day it reopened. They called and were notified a late fee would be assessed. But then I believe this is the one that they did not. They paid in person on February the 15th. And so, the other ones appear to, timely get the payment in, but for whatever reason, this one waited a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and there's no mention of trying to use the options, that are available at the tax office.
But if they knew that they were gonna have to pay a penalty, and the penalty would be assessed and already at the end of the month, what was the rush of coming in? If they knew they could do it by the 31st?
Because the penalty could have been waived if they would have come in the next day and said they couldn't, just like the last lady.
But they weren't necessarily
According to the
told that
statute, they have
originally.
till the 21st.
They had,
You can give them till the 21st, you don't have to.
Again, that goes back to
I
what we
guess that's.
But if they-
that's what we discussed earlier about the
Yeah.
fact issue about
and,
whether or not.
and we have no way of knowing what they were told or not told, but if they were told they were receiving a penalty and fees and penalty, and it was already accrued through the end of January, or end of January, or end of February, they knew that they had until the end of February to pay before there was an additional 1% put on. Isn't that correct? So what's the rush of going down if you're already told you've got
But is that, but did he say that?
That 1% is at the front end.
Oh, the 1%'s up front?
Right.
But it adds 1% each month, right? After that, after the end of February, or,
That is correct.
yeah. So they were already gonna be penalized, so what's the rush of paying it prior to that date? So they don't add the 1%, they already had the 6 or 7.
Again, I think it just goes back to the first question on whether or not the closing of the tax office, is a blanket cause or resulting in the failure to
And they
pay.
knew that, yeah, and they knew they had till the 21st.
Yeah.
And he didn't mention anything about why he couldn't choose any of the other options, correct? Besides having a large amount of, it was a large.
That's correct.
Besides-
And they did pay via check.
So they could have posted the check,
Yeah,
and if it hadn't been posted, if they posted on the 31st and it was postmarked like the 2nd or 3rd, we'd be believing it.
yeah. You know,
I'll step out for 1 second.
large amount is a relative term because there's huge tax payments that come in that utilize many different methods of paying those, so it's not relevant.
What we're seeing is the county portion of that huge check that's written, correct?
That is correct.
That's correct.
Okay, so the check,
That's all we have authority.
right, it's all we have authority, but their checks are cash in some cases, or whatever, were much, much larger than this. Because the
12,000.
school taxes are half of their total,
Correct.
so, you know. I
Yeah,
don't
the
know
county
what
portion
percentage-
would not be as large as the
Not
school
be near
district
as
portion.
large, so they're talking about a large check.
Correct.
$12,861.
12,008, there you go.
All right, what's next one?
All right, the next one is Laney Lane.
If there's a recommendation to move them into a different category, because we're kind of going through it before we're getting to the end. But if the group has a consensus to pay it, we need to say that. So when he reads off what we pay and what we don't at the end, we'll know what's there. So, you know, on this one, I agree it stays in the no pay deal, but y'all, you know, maybe a majority.
I think, and my feelings are, and I'm probably not gonna be in majority, I have no way of knowing that. But pursuant to 1A and J, taking both of them into consideration, the fact that the first one doesn't require confirmation of postage or anything else, that it be posted at a certain date, you know, I'm a believer in giving the benefit of the doubt to the taxpayers under these very special circumstances, and I truly support forgiving all of the penalties and everything, everyone who's requested it so far, and that's my opinion.
If they paid within the 21 days.
If they paid within the 21 days, if they meet the 21 days, because that's the only way they meet that first.
This was all beyond our control, and if we get into thinking about what people were, you know, if they're trying to game the system or not, I mean, it doesn't, you know, or be dishonest or that, I don't think that's necessarily our.
Well, the other taxpayers, and many of them, in numbers and dollars too, that paid theirs on time, may question that.
That's true.
That, you know, that we're not really digging in and looking at these things, when they make every effort to do theirs in a timely manner and whatever methods that are, in the many methods that are available out there. I gotta think about them.
And I certainly
So
don't.
I don't think this one would qualify.
And that's certainly why I don't disagree with you, Judge, but again, you can't read somebody's mind if they want to claim 333-011A1 as a reason that that it was closed, and I mean, it doesn't say anything about other methods. It says tax office closed, then they have 21 days from the time that they know or should have known of the delinquency, or they know of the delinquency on the 1st of February, but they got 21 days to pay it.
You know, the door was
But
closed.
isn't
but the
that
options
21
aren't closed.
days?
Hang on, Mike. The doors are closed, but the options weren't closed. And that's where I'm going with that. That,
Scott, isn't the 21 days just to have the ability to, or is it to request a waiver?
What was that question directed to me? It says the
Scott.
tax is paid not later than.
Yeah, so again, it would be a qualification to apply and seek a waiver pursuant to the first part, which is proof that the act caused or resulted in the delinquent payment.
See, Commissioner Smith, I think the deal is that 21 days is a criteria you have to meet to make the argument under A1, that you have to even be able to bring the waiver request.
It says if the tax is paid not later than the 21st day after the date the taxpayer knows or should know of the delinquency. So if
Yeah.
they paid it within the 21 days when they knew of the delinquency, and obviously they know of the delinquency because they didn't meet the January 31st deadline.
Well, that
21
means that
days
they
from
can,
that day
they
to pay.
can, that
all of
just
these
means
paid.
they can, if they paid it within that 21 days, they're authorized to file a
Yeah, it just-
application for a
it just
waiver. If
qualifies
they
them
didn't,
to
they're
sit
not.
there And say, I disagree.
Well, that's what these did.
I don't think it says if paid by then, it says if paid by the 21st, then you qualify to file.
That's
Am I
correct.
correct? Then
It
you
would be a,
qualify.
it would be
That's
a,
right.
it would be a requirement to pay on or before the 21st day. Had you known of the, known,
It's just a protest though, Commissioner.
but it also requires proof that closure of the tax office resulted or caused the payment to be delinquent. So you would theoretically, again, it's a fact question. I hear Commissioner Smith saying that he believes the closure of the tax office is sufficient evidence to prove that that caused or resulted in the failure to pay the tax on time. But there would be an argument that that was not the only option to pay, and so therefore it's a fact question about whether or not the other options would be sufficient and available to someone such that the closure of the tax office did not cause or result in the failure to pay the tax on time, because there were other options available. That's a fact question for the court to decide.
Commissioner Miller?
Also, oh, thanks. I have a question, kind of piggybacking on Commissioner Smith's point. Because when I read that section, it says cause or resulted in the taxpayer's failure to pay the tax before delinquency. But the tax office opens on February 2nd.
Correct.
So to me, what that says is, once the tax office is open, then the same due diligence applies. That people start coming in and paying their taxes on the 2nd, on the 3rd, preferably on the 2nd. I really don't see a problem with the 2nd because that's the first day that they open back up, and we're allowing people to pay in person. And so I'm also recognizing that postmark of the 2nd.
I think that
So-
could certainly be an argument.
So it answers the question, you know, the other alternate ways to pay, fine, but the tax office is back open on the 2nd, so I don't understand how, I can see the 3rd and the 4th, but I'm confused when payments are coming in later than that first week, and then we do the waiver and under this order. But I'm waiting to hear what the rest of the court, you know, decides on that. But that's kind of how my mind was going, like the tax office didn't stay closed permanently.
So, the question would be then, if the court said, well, as long as they came in on the 2nd, walked in or whatever, and paid it, how many of these that you've got in the recommended don't pay list would be in the pay list if they came in on the 2nd and paid it?
Let's see, Mr. Henry would have been one that paid in person at West on February the 3rd. And as a reminder, we opened at 10 a.m. on the 2nd, I believe. So that's Mr. Henry. I think Ms. Humphreys, we ended up moving it to the approval.
Yes.
Johnson was the one that Johnston is the one that paid in person on February 15th. Laney Lane was to be the next one. Judge, if I can just kind of run through it real quick, because this is the last one on the denial list.
Okay.
I'm sorry, there is one other that we did not have a lot of info on, but Miss Lane So we got hit with an ice sleet storm that closed and delayed our rural post offices and trapped in many rural families. I was trapped inside due to our concrete drive being complete ice. This also delayed my payment. She did not state if she did try to go to the post office. She just said, basically, this also delayed my payment. Her taxes were received on February the 8th and with a postmark date of February the 4th. Patterson, this is Daniel Patterson. His note just says, please include my property located at 953 Morning Star for forgiveness of the late fee I paid, and I will execute whatever process is needed. No details on it, but they did pay in person on February the 2nd.
What's their name?
This is Daniel Patterson, and it was paid in person on the 2nd.
There was a note
But there
also
was
that
no
they
evidence
talked to
in the
Commissioner
request for a
Jones,
waiver.
and that he may have some more information. I don't know.
And I had reached out to Suzanne, and she didn't believe there was any other. It was just basically what other counties were doing, I think.
Yeah, that was the conversation with, he had talked to, maybe the folks in Navarro County or something like that, and that they opened up on, they were closed like we were, and basically they opened up on the 2nd as if it was the 31st.
Well, this one
I don't know if
has
that's correct.
absolutely no proof in it. And that's problematic from the application standpoint.
You said, repeat the first part of that, Mike.
This application has no proof in it. It just says, please include my property for forgiveness. It doesn't say, I tried to mail it, I tried to go to the tax office,
And it was paid when?
anything.
It was paid in person on February the 2nd.
He actually comes in the first day we open back up. Tell me if I'm wrong, Dustin. I kind of went through, I counted, we have 5 envelopes it looks like 5 applicants that had postmarked envelopes for February 2nd. And we have 2 paid in person by February 2nd. To me, I had Alamos, I had 5 that had postmarked for February 2nd, and then 2 who paid either on February 1st or February 2nd. And again, I go back to, we did close the tax office on the 31st, and we closed it on the 1st. We allowed, then they came back open on the 2nd. So if it were me and I couldn't get in there by the 30th, because I didn't know that it was going to be shut down on the 31st. If I get in there on the 2nd, I'm thinking that's a person that was going to pay on the 31st. And that's the only reason I'm looking at the 2nd, is that we took that last day from them. They come in immediately on that on the 2nd. So that's a person I'm thinking would have came in on the 31st.
Again, not to advocate a position, and I'm sorry, Commissioner, if I interrupted.
No, I'm through.
It's not my role to advocate a position. However, if there's a question about whether or not the tax office was closed, the physical location was closed. However, there were other options open. And so theoretically, and from a legal perspective, you could argue, and again, I'm not advocating one position or the other, but you could argue that the tax office was open because payment avenues were available.
I agree. No, you're absolutely right. I guess just a lot of grace on that other side.
There's a lot to consider here, for sure.
You're right.
So, okay, I'm trying to get to this, some kind of conclusion here. So, is it a consensus that the door being locked is not saying that we are closed, that all options are out? Is that a consensus or not? I mean, I believe that.
I don't.
Well, that's a true statement.
Yeah.
It's a true statement.
And again, we just have to be careful of inferring, well, I would have thought this, and I think that's what they thought. And we have to look at the facts. And if the facts don't lend themselves to covering this, we gotta be careful about inferring things for other people and setting precedents going forward.
Yeah.
There may be other applications to come forward as well. There's 180 days from the date
Right.
of the delinquency to make applications, so there is there is a precedent that may be set.
Right. I agree with Commissioner Perry. Think we get in a gray area when we start inferring. And so I'm just gonna look at purely at the calendar, and that is the county closed on that last day that we usually have a lot of people come in, on the 31st.
And most of them never make it inside though. They go to the drop-off boxes.
Okay.
Unless they have cash or something that they don't want to drop off.
Let Commissioner Pat, to, go ahead with her thought. Commissioner Miller. Kept wanting to say
Okay.
Chisholm.
And I'm okay. So for me, I just look at the second as maybe an alternative option for the 31st. And that's why the people who show up in the packet with February 2nd as their activity are people that I kind of see as, that's why I see that group that way.
I'm inclined to follow along with your thought process, sir.
And if we use that thought process, we were going to recommend the denial of 4. Ms. Humphreys is one that got moved over to the approve because she would fit into that category anyway. She paid online on February the 1st, but it was going to be Mr. Bill Henry. He paid in person on February the 3rd, so he would miss that date. The Johnstons would miss that date because they paid in person on February the 15th. Laney Lane postmarked hers hers came postmarked on February the 4th. And then Daniel Patterson, he paid in person on February 2nd. So Patterson would move to, it's the one that did not give any info, but paid in person on February the 2nd.
So do you have a spreadsheet that has the final list on it that you?
I don't judge, but I can, I'm trying to think the easiest way to do it.
While he's thinking, you mentioned keeping in mind the taxpayers who made the effort and did pay on time. I think it's relevant to add that once we got all the mail processed that was timely, the percent of levy paid is higher than it was at the same time in 2022.
With no weather issues.
With no weather issues,
Yeah.
yes. So the majority of the taxpayers did make the effort, and that's even with all the postmark issues.
Yeah.
Mike, I would take exception to one statement you said about most people drop it in the drop box instead of paying in person. Or I forget exactly how you said it, but if you've been down here on the 30th and the 31st and seen people lined up inside to pay their taxes and wrapped all the way around the building, you might think differently.
And they're not in a good.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not
That's true.
lined up here to drop it in the drop box.
But how much of that is all?
That's true.
A lot of it is cash.
Yeah, everybody waits to the last.
Because they've got cash to pay.
A lot of it is cash.
Because they got, and they don't want to pay any other way other than cash. That's all they have.
What percentage normally comes out of the drop box?
I can't answer that. I would be making it up. More comes out when it's on the due date.
That's our job, Mike.
More comes out if it's on or close to the due date, comes out of the drop box, because they don't want to wait in line and they have a check.
I just want to make one, I think Mr. Henry, who paid on the 3rd, he was one of the first ones that contacted us about this and about the fact that we could waive the waive all this, and he did wait till the 3rd. I mean, wait till the 3rd to pay, mainly because of these questions. So,
And you know, you go back to the, what was her name? I think Johnson lived out on Royal Ranch. They came in person to visit with the commissioners when they were told that, about the penalties and everything. And that, I think they told me that's the reason they said, well, if we've got to pay it, then we're going to wait till the end to pay it. And they paid it on the 15th because we've already got the penalty, but we'd like to try to protest the payment of it. They made that comment. So, said they'd always paid on time. I think they moved here from out of state. So they'd never been late before paying taxes, but they said the office was closed and they like to get the receipt in hand, they said.
But if you go to the 3rd, didn't we have one that was the 4th as well? And then you go, okay, well, what's
What about the
okay
5th?
then, and you start.
But they felt like they met that 21-day deadline.
But I don't think they've been explained right on that 21-day, because what I heard from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that as long as you paid by the 21st, you ought to be fine. And what that says is if you pay by the 21st, it only gives you the right to protest to us to exempt you from your late fees and your fines.
And that's what they did. They paid by the.
But all it did was give them the right to come to us and say, do the facts qualify?
That would be true about anybody.
It doesn't guarantee. I'm just hearing from you that if you paid by the 21st, you should be guaranteed to have a waiver.
No guarantee, just, but,
Okay.
yeah, no guarantee, absolutely no, there's no guarantees at all, but, it simply knows or should know of the delinquency, and they paid by the 21st when they knew of the delinquency.
So what have you got on your on pay list?
Okay, so the ones in green, Alamo Structural Steel, they were postmarked February the 2nd. Mr. Campbell is one that felt the evidence was sufficient with the post office. Judd Griffiths, with the exception of the 3 properties that checks were dated later and they were postmarked February 21st. And then I know Commissioner Jones had mentioned Mr. Henry, that's the in-person on February 3rd. Shirley Hill was marked as approved. Ms. Humphreys was approved. Dan and Angie Johnston, the one Commissioner Smith just mentioned, they were in person on 2/15. Laney Lane is one that was postmarked on 2/4, and info from her did not give any specifics on when it was mailed. It just sounds like driveway was icy. Daniel Patterson is one that was in person.
Pay or not pay?
That's one that's now is recommended to not pay.
Okay.
And then Daniel Patterson is one that we had recommended to not pay just due to a lack of info, but it was an in-person on February 2nd. So under this criteria, it would be a 1 mark to pay. And then the ones we didn't step through, the Province, Derek Richards and Carol Treese, it's just Carol Treese on these. Those are all ones that we felt met the post office requirement. They stated they had mailed it timely. Some of them even went into the detail on what time it was dropped off. Derek Richards had metered the mail at an office and taken it over there as well.
And those were postmarked February 2nd, right? Province.
Yes, so those were all Province, Richards, and Treese were all postmarked on the 2nd. That's correct.
All right, and not to go into details and just mention the ones not pay again.
So that would be just using the criteria. Mr. William Bill Henry was paid in person on February the 3rd. Dan and Angie Johnston in person on the 15th, and Laney Lane postmarked on February the 4th. It would be those 3 plus the 3 properties under Judd Griffiths.
Then I got one question, because if we're gonna take the paid in person for Bill Henry on the 3rd, will we not take the postmark of the 3rd for William Campbell?
That's where it starts getting
dicey. So I guess what we really have to decide, is it the 2nd or is it?
That's right.
3rd or the 4th or the 5th?
Yeah.
And Commissioner Miller, Mr. Campbell is one we had felt qualified due. he had stated that he had sent payment in before the required deadline. So we took that and it was through the Postal Service failure to pick up. So even though that one was postmarked on the 3rd, we felt that it fit in. We would have liked more info, but he stated he sent it in before the required deadline.
And so it's not all the offices may have moved at the same pace in postmarking, the ones that built up. But they should all be the 2nd or 3rd at the latest.
Second or third? That's like what you're saying.
Yeah. Do we want to take it? Do we want to give one more day?
So,
I think you have to base it on the evidence they present and the postmark date, not just set a postmark date.
What was the check date on Laney Lane, Kathy? Do you know the date the check was written on Laney Lane?
Check. Yeah, it's not in this info.
Kathy, do you have it?
I don't have it with me. Let me see how quickly I can get it.
Mike.
Hey, I'm on coffee call.
mute.
Need to push that do not disturb button.
While we're looking at it, it appears that we're basing all of these on J, is that correct? That we're not giving any consideration to A1 at all?
I believe now some would be under A1. There were some that didn't mail, so some were in person.
The date on
But
Lady
we've
Lane's
made
check
in
was-
person the second.
If we're giving credence.
Left blank.
Okay, go ahead, Mike, I'm sorry, the date?
The date on
I
Laney
think-
Lane's check was left blank.
Wow,
They pulled the image
okay.
The date on
Yeah.
Laney Lane's check was what?
blank.
Huh, interesting.
Dustin, if we're
Well-
giving credence to A1, then we must be mixing it with the 2-2 to establish a date, because we're certainly not giving them the 21 days.
Right. It would be
So
the
we're mixing
in-person
A1
ones.
and J.
The people that paid in person could not fit under J. And so it would be like Scott had said, it's a fact issue for the court. And if the court is saying the 2-2 is the date, then that's the date for a timely payment.
So Miss Lane would stay in the no column.
Right, correct.
Right, and it concerns me that there's no date on her check.
Yeah.
Well, that's what just can
trick.
tip the scales for me.
Doesn't that slow the processing of the check? Or it used to?
It would not slow the process of the postmark.
They don't look at anything on the check anymore.
I didn't think so.
So,
No, in fact, sometimes people flip the words and the payee, and it still goes through.
Still goes through?
so Dustin, could you, one more time, read through the list of the affidavits today? Read under ones that are gonna meet the criteria that the consensus of the court is the second, and then read the ones that are not gonna fall under that?
Yes, sir. So I'll just start at the top if that's okay. So Alamo Structural Steel, they had tried to make that, or they dropped it off at the post office. It was prior to the date. It was postmarked on February 2nd. So this one would fit. Mr. William Campbell is one. The postmark date was February 3rd, but he did say he took it to the post office prior to the delinquent date. So we feel it fits. Mr. Griffiths has a long list of properties that we do all. He took them to the post office prior to the delinquent date. Most were postmarked on the 2nd, but there are 3 that should be excluded because the check was dated February 18th and they were postmarked on February the 21st. Mr. William Bill Henry would be in the deny column because he paid in person on February the 3rd. Shirley Hill is approved with the postmark date of February the 2nd. Leandra Humphreys is approved. She paid online on February the 1st after her internet connection was restored. Dan and Angie Johnston would be one marked deny because they paid in person on February the 15th. Laney Lane, check date was left blank and postmarked on February the 4th. Daniel Patterson paid in person on February the 2nd. Brenda Province and Thomas Province, theirs were timely delivered to the post office and postmarked on February the 2nd, as was Derek Richards and Steve or just Carol Treese. It was delivered before the delinquent date and postmarked on February the 2nd.
With that being said, I would make a motion to accept the recommendation of our county administrator and our county attorney, Mike Dixon, on these particular waivers, and the recommendation has been made of who they would recommend payment or reimbursement to and who they wouldn't.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
Question.
Yes, sir.
We originally said we were going to vote on these, take these individually. I thought to vote on, taking them as a group doesn't allow you to vote no on ones you don't agree with.
Okay.
And I would like a record vote on that, the ones that I do not agree with.
Well,
If that's not,
yeah, we can
if
go
that's not
down through
possible,
those.
if that's not possible, then included in my vote to approve would be that I don't agree with some of the denials.
We can go down those quickly, can't we, Dustin?
Sir?
Yes, we can.
We can go down those quickly.
If you want to do the denials, that might be the easiest way, just the denials.
I withdraw my motion.
I rescind my second.
Okay.
Give me 1 second and let me get my
Group the
screen
denials,
situated.
group the denials.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Why don't we make another motion to approve the ones that we accepted? And then we'll go through the denials.
That would work for me.
Whatever works. Okay.
Well, I will make a motion to approve the ones that were recommended to us to be accepted for their waiver of penalties and interest.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? No other discussion? Call for a vote.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Judge Felton,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Pass.
All right, the first one that would be recommended for denial would be N2D regarding requests submitted by William Bill Henry.
I make a motion we deny.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? No other discussion. Call for a vote.
Commissioner Smith,
No.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Judge Felton,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
No.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Pass. Next one.
Next one is N2G regarding requests submitted by Dan and Angie Johnston.
And that's recommended as a deny.
Yes,
I
sir.
guess every one of these are. Okay, I make a motion we deny.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? No discussion. Call for a vote.
Commissioner Smith,
No.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Judge Felton,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
No.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Pass.
And the last one is N2H regarding requests submitted by Laney Lane.
I make a motion we deny.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? No other discussion. Call for a vote.
Commissioner Smith,
No.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Judge Felton,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
No.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Pass.
We have one more, Dustin. We've got to get those 3 accounts on
Into C.
Griffiths.
Yeah, on Griffiths, yeah, and those are
Yes.
made, very late. And I make
Yeah.
a motion, we deny those.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, second, any other discussion? No other discussion, call for a vote.
Commissioner Smith,
No.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Judge Felton,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Pass. All right, what else?
That's it. We'll have to put together, I mean, Scott has already put together a resolution, but he's gonna have to go back with our notes and do a resolution for you to sign, Judge.
Okay,
But it'll incorporate, well, actually, we'll have a resolution on each one of them, so.
okay. All right, we're gonna go into a 5-minute recess. And Chris Collins will be next. I'm gonna have to step out, and I'll turn the gavel over to Commissioner Perry. And it is 10:26.
session at this time. Dustin, where do we go from here? We've got Chris sitting here looking at us this morning, so I'm assuming we'll go to her agenda item.
Yes, yes, sir. That is item N4. It's the Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce Monthly Economic Development Report for January 2023. Chris?
N4. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. Thank y'all for having me today. I appreciate it. In your packet, you have our full economic development report along with financials and a variety of activity that was conducted for the month of January. It was a strong month for attraction inquiries. We continue to see, picking up from where we were at the end of 22, rolling into 23, that there's still a lot of interest in our community. From a proposal submitted, 6 were submitted in January. However, we had a slew of inquiries that came in at the end of the month. And so for February, you see that those proposals go out the door in February instead of going out in January. That's where the gap is there. Had a strong month when it came to on-site attraction visits as well. So the more often we can get boots on the ground or get in front of folks, even if it's virtually, the better it serves our purpose in growing the area. Assistance requests and business retention visits, we're still pushing forward, making a really big push to get back to where we were in pre-COVID in our on-site business retention visits. We've also noticed that there have been this year a number of turnover with new plant managers coming through. And so we're making concerted efforts to get in front of those individuals early out, introduce them to the community, and establish that relationship from the get-go so that they know that we're a community that supports their operation and that wants to be available and of assistance if they have challenges or opportunities for growth in the marketplace. So that is a big push for us in this 2023 year. Business development events, none in January, but we certainly picked back up in February, which you'll see in the next month's report. Overall, we have 39 different projects that we're working on right now. I would say that within that 39, there's probably 10 really core projects that are very active in the marketplace right now. But collectively, those 39 projects represent over 3,200 potential new jobs in the marketplace. 5.9 million square feet of real estate, and that would be new construction and over $6 billion worth of new capital investment into the community. And so we continue to see large projects looking at the marketplace. That's not unique to our community. Across the state of Texas, my counterparts, they are seeing very large projects considering their area as well. So Texas continues to be a place that's attractive. We did, and thank y'all for your support for this, have the announcement with Graphic Packaging International at the very beginning of February. And that, again, was $1 billion investment that will occur over 3 years, 640,000 square feet of new construction that'll be constructed in the Gateway Business Park, which is a smaller park within the Texas Central Park in the southwest portion of McLennan County. It's a 119-acre campus. 230 jobs that will have an average annual wage of $65,000 a year, plus benefits on top of that. And it is a state-of-the-art facility. Judge Felton had the opportunity to visit their facility in Kalamazoo, which is the model for what the Waco facility will look like. And it is something to behold. The machine itself is as long as a football field. So to think about something like that coming into the community. Once it's on the ground, it's not going anywhere. So,
I've had a bunch of people say that's going to smell, and
Nope.
you told us it's not.
It is not. So this is not a traditional. This is a recycled paperboard facility. So
they don't take raw.
They're not taking virgin wood and creating paper, which is what the sulfur is generated from that, and that's what you smell in like East Texas and the paper mills there. This is not like that at all. So what they're doing is they're taking your used corrugated box. So you purchase something from Amazon, you've got that box. It goes rather than going to the landfill, it's being picked up by a recycler. Those recyclers are providing that raw material. That's their raw material for Graphic Packaging. They're taking that paper, that cardboard. They're shredding it up, mixing it with water and some starches, and basically making a new corrugated or a new paper board. So that board becomes the same thing that you find in your cake box, or, it's the
Cereal
thinner
box.
cereal boxes, exactly. But there's not a smell to it. When you, especially from the outside, when you walk into the facility and you're visiting there, you will smell the smell of cardboard boxes, but that's what it is. It's not that sulfury, pungent smell that you would smell from a traditional paper mill.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, does that cardboard go out somewhere else flat, get turned into cereal boxes, or do they do that right there also?
So they don't do it in that facility. They have a sister facility that can make those
That can
materials.
make those,
So
okay.
it basically goes into a really long conveyor belt and is pressed down as it goes. The water's squeezed out of it and formed into the paperboard, and then it's rolled. And then those giant rolls are shipped off to the final producer of the boxes. But they will put a layer of white latex paint on the top of it, and then that's what the printing is on, that goes on there. So that's how they're able to provide a uniformed look for all the cereal boxes and cake boxes. So it's the paperboard plus a white layer of paint on top, and then that's shipped off.
Interesting.
It is a very interesting process to watch. Yep. But, again, that is our largest economic development project that we've announced to date. And we hope that there will be some more that'll be at that number or higher. But I also just wanted to thank y'all again for your investment in the NWACO talent retention and attraction program that we kicked off last year. And I wanted to give you some insights for the month of January, just so you could understand how well this program is doing. It's taken a little bit of a different turn than we originally thought that it would, but we're doing a national level outreach in specific job sectors, so engineering technicians and healthcare workers, because those are the most in demand in our marketplace right now, that also have a correspondingly high wage that goes along with them. So we're doing organic outreach, and then we're also doing paid searches that go along with this. So if you're looking through your Facebook, you see like sponsored ads. If you're going on and you're doing a Google search, you see, when you do a search, you'll see that there are sponsored responses, and then there are non-sponsored. So we're doing a level of paid search responses, and then we're also doing just a traditional organic outreach. But for the month of January, in the paid search category, we had over 69,000 impressions. We're doing audio streaming too, so if you listen to Spotify or any of those radio streaming services, you won't hear them in McLennan County, but you will hear them if you're in one of these specific areas that we're targeting. You have to listen to the ad in order to continue to listen to the free music. And so they're listening to a 30-second commercial about in Waco, and this is a community for talented individuals, and we want them to move here. And we have over almost 67,000 impressions for that. We're utilizing Facebook and Instagram, where we've had combined almost 320,000 impressions there. And then LinkedIn has been very successful for us as well, where we've had 38,000 impressions through our efforts there. Again, we're technician jobs, healthcare careers, engineering careers, manufacturing jobs, and healthcare jobs. Those are the ones that are the top performing keywords. So if somebody is looking for, they're interested, they say, I'm interested in manufacturing jobs. Ours will be one that pops up to the top for in Waco, and it'll connect them to the job board and opportunities that employers have posted there. And we just in the month of January had 4,475 users, of which 4,400 were new. So we're not getting a lot of we're getting a lot of new people that are coming to the marketplace and looking at that webpage. The job board is one at the top, the job dashboard and the work page, so people are, as they're hearing this, really are connecting with the career pathway piece. So we feel like it's really helping to get the word out there that this is a place for talented individuals to relocate into. And so we're planning to come in at a future meeting and give you a much more comprehensive overview of the work that we've been doing on economic development, how the In Waco program has, how well it's done, and then talking to you about the future and some of the other programs that we want to put into play that will really help hopefully start the pipeline even earlier in the community about putting children and young people into career pathways and connecting them with the business community much earlier than they're getting in the high school level. So.
I like the initiative that we have for engineers coming into the area. I believe I was told that Baylor University has launched a program for low-income students, and it seems that they're focused on high school students here locally, where they will pay their college tuition if they major in engineering.
I'm not familiar with that program, but I'd be more than happy to learn more about it. I know that our Aviation Alliance provides scholarship funding for local students to go into aerospace, aviation, and engineering career pathways. And so we fund a number of students to go into TSTC, MCC, or Baylor, or even Texas Tech or Tarleton through the University Center. But the idea is really specifically targeting local students and giving them a leg up to get into those programs.
I think that's wonderful. And when I heard about the engineering initiative at Baylor University, I think maybe a conversation with our business community that's looking for engineers and what they're doing. I just think it's a win-win.
Absolutely, and I think the greatest way that we could be helpful in getting those young people into successfully completing that degree path and getting them into jobs is to getting them into internships early out in cooperatives where they're getting to work with those employers, getting hands-on training and in real-world scenarios. So it's one thing to learn from the book, but it's another thing to take the book learning and put it into application in the workplace and to learn all of those pieces and to really grow a love for that career too. And I think that's a great way for the students to get more involved in their potential career, but it's a great way for the employer to really start cultivating those young people and securing them for the long term, because you create a loyalty there too. And oftentimes those employers will contribute to those young people and their tuition or books or give them stipends to help them continue to be successful. Especially, if you've struggled to get into college, it's expensive, you have life, and then you have trying to get your work done to get to your degree. Everything that we can do to remove barriers to get those kids to be successful in life, I think that's a great thing.
I agree. I applaud Baylor University.
Absolutely.
'Cause I know the population that they're looking at is a household income of $50,000 and less.
Yep.
And I think you take those, what they say, the old adage, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Well, it is true.
Absolutely.
And you have some really bright individuals. They just don't have the economic means to further their education.
Yep.
And I just think Waco, McLennan County will just truly benefit from that Baylor initiative. And then when we partner with the business community, I think it's just an all-around win-win.
Yes.
You said it took a different direction than what y'all originally planned, but in Waco seems to have been very much of a success.
Yeah, we would say that it's been a really successful program in creating much more awareness about the area, creating an opportunity to connect people with jobs. What we thought would happen was what they saw in Tulsa, where they created this concierge service where people would reach out to us and say, okay, help me connect on an individual basis. And that's not necessarily happening. But we absolutely can see that people are going in, they're looking at jobs, they're reaching out to employers. It's just the employers, when they post a job, they're linking that job directly to their own website. And so once they leave our site, they click on that job, it takes them to L3 or SpaceX or whomever. We lose track of them at that point. So we really rely on the employer at that point to come back and say, hey, this person came to us through in Waco, if they know. But since they're linking to us through their own, they're linking to the job through their own website, it becomes harder to trace where that connectivity is
Are there
going.
any efforts that or ideas that can help the companies turn around and give you guys valuable information off of that?
So we do have some corporate investors that have come in, and they have their own specific landing pages. And there is a specific targeted outreach. So if we're looking at engineers, for instance, we'll have direct outreach that's talking about the engineering positions that are available at L3 Harris or at these sponsored employers. And so they will know specifically if somebody came to them through that landing page or if they came through their website, and they can ask the question. But we also have on the In Waco page a number of employers that aren't the paid investors. They just post their jobs there, and they won't necessarily know if those job seekers came to them through In Waco without asking that question.
Okay. I was just a little curious about that last week while I was listening to Spotify, while I was reading my Facebook and tweeting. Thank you for that information. You believe that?
I'm glad that you did say tweeting, though, so you got it
I
right.
know you're busy in there, now I know what you're doing. So-
Thank you, Chris.
Chris, anything else?
No, but Commissioner, you were mentioning about Baylor and their engineering program. I would just say that TSTC has the #1 two-year technical college in the state of Texas for engineering degrees. And oftentimes those, because they're getting applied learning, we hear from employers that they are excellent when it comes to transferring into the workplace. And then oftentimes those folks will go on and go back to school to get their full out 4-year engineering degree. And then the other side of that is that MCC has also created a 2-year engineering program that has a feeder into Texas Tech right now. But I would love to know if they're also in connection with Baylor on that too. But talking to the team that leads that engineering program at MCC, they've said that the tech in Lubbock, the folks that run that engineering program have said that those students that transfer in from the MCC program are much more prepared and much better students than some of the ones that have traditionally started at Tech and are going through that program.
Wow.
So I think, kudos to all of our institutions for what they're doing to try to increase that particular discipline.
I agree.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I agree. And with all the work that we're doing for our citizens, I just hope that they're incentivized
Absolutely.
to stay here.
Yes, and that's the thing. If they go to Lubbock, we want them to come home.
Right.
That's the other thing. So we want to make sure that we're bringing them back with opportunities to work locally.
I was going to say the TSTC program, I know that the 2-year program, oftentimes, once those students enter the workforce, those employers will pay for that last 2 years.
Yes.
To get a bachelor's degree or whatever, and that's a great incentive for a young person.
Absolutely. Sometimes when you're young, you don't realize how
No,
important that is, though.
Yeah, that's true.
But when you're still paying off your student debt, you know for sure how important that is.
Okay.
All right, thank y'all very much.
Chris, thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Chris.
Need a motion to approve Chris's report for recording purposes.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Have a good day, ma'am.
Thank you, y'all too.
You bet, thank you. Dustin, where do we go? I know we got A lot of lifting left to do, so.
Yes, sir. We can just head back to the top, to the consent agenda, to those pulled items. So E3A, if recommendation will be to defer it this week.
Okay, can we get a motion to defer?
So moved.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
E3B is an HR item for the county sheriff. I'd like to call on Anna.
Thank you, Dustin. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Anna.
I have here a request from the sheriff's office to reclassify a current deputy position to a corporal rank. And so the position in question is position number 480. And it is the current school resource officer position that is assigned to the Bosque School District. It supports security and is attempting to also support the educational and training for safety within the school environment for all campuses of the district. And so that's what's prompting the request for the reclassification. So in addition to just providing security and safety plans, they also plan on conducting emergency training courses for school personnel. So this added training did prompt a review here from HR for the position, and it is resulting in a change in pay grade and title change. So currently it's a deputy, and the recommended title would be corporal. And then the recommended pay grade is an S54 from its current pay grade of S53. The base pay for that corresponding title would be $68,943, which is different from the current budget of a base deputy pay. It's $56,780. There's a current agreement for the Bosqueville School District to fund the position, including the increase related to this reclassification. And so we would recommend the change, and I can take any questions from here.
Any questions? I'll need a motion to accept the request for the reclassification from the county sheriff.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Moving on to item F, budget and budget amendments. F1's regarding the FY23 budget. Francis?
Thanks, Dustin. So yes, these are the budget amendments for 2023. So starting with F1A, this is General Fund, Health Services Department. They're requesting to move within their department into supplies for postage cost. F1B, this is General Fund for 474th. The request is to move within that department into furniture and equipment, and this is to purchase some needed technical equipment for their courtroom, microphones, monitor, TV mount, and related cables. F1C, this is General Fund, Justice of the Peace Precinct 2, requesting to move within their department into furniture and equipment, and they are wanting to purchase a shredder for their office. F1D, this is General Fund Engineering. On the last agenda, you approved the use of part-time employees for that office, and so this is increasing the line items necessary to pay employees. That would be part-time. They did have excess funds in full-time employees, so we are moving from that line item. F1E, this is General Fund Mental Health Court Department. Again, same reason for the last. They are going to be using their part-time pay line, and so we're increasing the necessary lines. At this time, they don't have excess funds within their department, so they are requesting to use the general fund contingencies. F1F, this is General Fund 414th District Court. There was some equipment that was approved and a budget amendment was done on the last agenda, or one of the last agendas, but there was an increase in the cost of the laptop that was previously presented to you. So we were needing to adjust that line item for that increase, and the request is again coming from contingencies. F1G, this is in Fund 150, the Court Reporter Service Fund. So this request is for court reporting equipment for the court reporter that is now in the 474th. So of course, new court, no equipment existed previously. So this is, this would move money from contingencies within that special revenue fund into the appropriate line. F1H, this is in Fund 122, which is the County Clerk Records Management Fund. The request is to move from the contingencies in that fund into software support and maintenance. And this is to cover cost payable to EDOC to develop and host an attorney portal. There's another item on the agenda, I believe it's G2, that this coincides with. And then F1I, this is General Fund Justice of the Peace Precinct 5. So the judge is requesting to purchase new furniture to replace current furniture that is in that office. So you'll see an attached quote with a listing of those items. The request, again, is coming from contingencies. Any questions?
Anyone have questions or comments? If not, I'll need a motion to approve F1A through F1I.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then, I'm sorry, and then J needs to be deferred today.
Okay.
Motion to defer.
F1J.
Yes, sir.
Second.
A motion and a second to defer F1J. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
F1K is authorization of Texas Association of Counties claim deductible invoices. F1K1 is an invoice totaling $480 for a claim associated with Cornell Martin. F1K2 is related to that same one, and it totals 80 cents.
Okay. I don't know why I found that humorous, but 80 cents, so. We'll need a motion to approve F1K1 and F1K2.
So moved.
Moved. Oh, second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
F1L, Information Technology, authorization of Texas Association of Governmental Information Technology Managers membership. I'd like to call on John Carter.
Make sure your mic works.
There we go.
There we go.
Good morning, commissioners.
How are you today?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, sir. Go right ahead.
So F1L, what we're looking to do here is just authorize a membership in the Texas Association of Governmental Information Technology Managers. It's a mouthful. The membership fee is $175, covers the entire organization, and then anyone can join as a sub member to that for no additional expense.
Okay. Anyone have questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Right.
Thank you.
Under item G, bids, RFPs, RFQs, G1 is authorization of recommendation for RFP 23-001, sliding door control mechanism replacement for Highway 6 jail. Kent?
Yes, on this proposal, we had two responses, one from Cornerstone Detention Products, another from Sustainable Security Solutions, Inc. We recommend McLennan County Commissioners grant the award for the replacement of the 12 sliding doors in McLennan County Highway 6 Jail to Cornerstone Detention Products, Inc. They submitted the lowest and best response to our proposal. I had Cinnamon and TJ look at their responses, and they graded it out. And of course, Cornerstone, again, was the lowest and best response.
Okay. Anyone have questions or comments for Ken? If not, what's the pleasure of the court?
Move to approve the recommendation to award the contract to Cornerstone Detention Products, Inc.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
G2 is authorization of proposal with EDOC Tech for development and host website for county clerk's attorney portal. As Francis mentioned during the budget amendments, this is a proposal totaling $12,000. It's to create a portal similar to what we've done for the district clerk, where authorized attorneys can view PDF images. After the first year, it does have a maintenance and hosting cost of $6,000 per year, and funding does come from the county clerk's records management fund.
Questions or comments? I'll need a motion to approve.
So move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Under item H, contracts, interlocal agreements, H1 is authorization of construction manager at risk agreement with John W. Irwin Contractor for the remodel of the downtown jail. Mike, did you want to step through this? Mike, if you're there, you're on mute. And if not, I can start going through it and then we can add Mike in if there's any questions. So back on the 21st of February, we selected.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay. All right, Mike, did you want to step through it?
It's okay, go ahead. I'll essentially what it is the contract, the construction manager at risk contract to with the awarded company, John W. Irwin Contractors, Inc., for the renovation of the downtown jail space. It is pretty much how all construction management risk contracts are. They help through the design process and help us with long lead time items. And then when the construction documents are created, we agree to a guaranteed maximum price, which they cannot exceed. And if they do, they eat the cost. It's a long process, but at every stage, they come back with the architect to the commissioner's court. You know, once schematic design documents are done, they come to the commissioner's court and update the court on cost estimates and whether there's stuff that needs to be taken out or added and stuff like that. And their design documents phase, same thing. Contract documents phase, same thing. So the court will be kept in the loop on this and that will be a very important part of the contract, is explaining to the commissioners what needs to be done, what the cost estimates are, and what options there are to try to bring those cost estimates down. Dustin, you got anything else?
No, that's that's it. Their fee, CMR's fee is 2.25% of the construction cost, and it does include the fee for those pre-construction services as well.
Okay. Anyone have questions? What's the pleasure of the court?
Move to approve.
Have a motion. We have a second. I'll second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
H2 is authorization of agreement for waterside maintenance with Specialty Water Treatments, LLC. TJ?
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Morning, TJ.
So this is our yearly agreement with our water softening company that comes in and treats our chill water system. There's a slight increase from last year, but that's kind of to be expected. There is a rise in chemical costs. So we find it to be appropriate. So we recommend.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Need a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
H3 is authorization of memorandum of understanding with Golson Independent School District Police Department for communication and coordination with the McLennan County Sheriff's Office. And David Ives, are you on or in the courtroom?
He's not here.
If not, this is similar to what we did last session. I believe it was with Mark, where under the education code, it states that a school police department and law enforcement agency that where they have overlap in jurisdiction, they will communicate and coordinate with each other. So that's basically what this MOU sets out.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? What's the pleasure of the court?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
H4 is the authorization of agreements, addendums, amendment with CTWP and FP Mailing Solutions for postage machine for Justice of the Peace Precinct 5. Ken?
Yes, we had this request for a postage machine for JP5. The lease agreement on the machine and the one that weighs it and does all that is $189.32. There's a secondary document for $38 that is for the meter itself for the postage. It is my understanding from the salesman that that $38 is included in the lease agreement amount of $189.32. So if the court approves, we'll get this going.
Okay. Anyone have a question or comment? Need a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
H5 is authorization of participation agreement with Choice Partners Cooperative. Ken?
We, for a while, had been using a cooperative agreement for providing the food at the juvenile. I think it's yearly, they take a look at this, or every 2 years. And this is a renewal. We'll be using the same company. Juvenile actually sent it over to me to have this renewed. We've checked it all off. It's for Labatt Food Service, and it lists Kathy Stroud basically as contact at Juvenile, and there's a signature line for the county judge to sign it. But anyway, if the court approves it, we'll get this sent back to Choice Partners.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the court?
Question real quick. Ken, is this the old Houston ISD cooperative co-op?
I think it is.
I think it's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We have nothing under item I this week. Under item J, capital improvement and construction projects. J1 is discussion and or action regarding Trading House Lake Park improvement projects. TJ? And TJ, did you need me to share my screen? And TJ, you're on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, if you would, Dustin, that'd be great. That way everybody's just kind of get a picture of what we're asking for. So these are a couple of projects that we've wanted to do for a couple of years now, and kind of riding on the tail of the rowing competition that we're going to have out there. We thought it'd be best if we go ahead and bring it up to the court now and try to get some of these things knocked out. So project one is kind of to create a sandy beach area, much like some of the swimming areas that you see at Lake Waco, right there in Park 1 off of Hall Drive. It would consist of about 750 feet of sandy beachfront that our patrons could use, at their leisure and their pleasure. So that's one ask. Part two of the project that we're asking for is just for some crushed concrete so we can go through and resurface some of our roads in Park 1 and a couple of areas in Park 2 that have become pretty rough. Part 3 of the project is a bulkhead project. We're going to hold on that for now. We're actually going to meet with some contractors later on this week and talk about dipping out the Hall Drive boat ramp to see if we can even obtain, a good depth to launch a boat if the lake continues to fall like it is. So those are the main projects that we're kind of asking for. This is kind of a glimpse of, where we see that park in the future, what kind of things that we can put in for the patrons out there. Does anybody have any questions?
We created a fund for this, isn't there a fund that,
I think there's a budget associated.
isn't there a budget
So
associated?
we didn't budget for these specifically, right, TJ? There's.
Correct. Yeah. So we've got, I believe we have a 401 account, and then we've also got a bond fund account number that's kind of set up, but they aren't budgeted for these specific projects. They're budgeted for various things.
I was thinking we had
So we'll need
something.
to move money within those funds. Fund 401 is probably a good place to, I would think, for these projects to come from, just so we can, keep our bond proceeds for the like something like the judicial center or something like that. But most of these should fit in permanent improvement project umbrella that we could put in the 401 account. The road enhancements, that may be something we look at, and it may just be something that's just road maintenance, but we will need to adjust the budget in some way for all the things he has listed.
So I add up 73,6.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. My motion would be to approve 1 and 2.
Have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah, so I've gotten a couple of calls about the boat ramp not being usable. So, I mean, can you go over that again?
Sure. Yeah. So we're going to meet with a local excavation contractor who's got the equipment to kind of dip that ramp out and get us, down to a depth where you can safely launch a boat. So that's our biggest issue right now. The lake in its current conditions, we just don't have the depth.
Right.
It's real shallow on that end, and we can't seem to get to where we need to be to open those ramps up without dipping it out.
Well, I know that is that's an issue. I mean, it's something I've gotten calls about. Needing work on the boat ramp. So if we can.
Yeah, definitely. And the bulkhead that you've seen in the picture, so that's kind of, in the grand scheme of things, we want to develop that out and build it out to keep whatever we do dip out of the ramp from silting back in the future. If we go in and we dip out the ramps, we're going to continue to dip them out probably once a year. So the bulkhead kind of prevents that from silting back in and gets us a little more longevity instead of paying for someone to continue to come out and dip the area.
You got it. And so your bulkhead, you're basically just talking, that's all the riprap rock, right? You'll
Yes, sir.
Stack it out and keep it from, okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Sorry, let me get unmuted. All right, moving to item J2 regarding the 415th Columbus Avenue site demolition proposal with Walker Partners. This is services through January, invoice number 24052. Ken?
Yes, this invoice amount is for $3,850. It included preliminary documents of $800, some final documents for $1,950, and the franchise utility coordination of $1,100. Again, the total amount we contracted Walker Partners for this project was $26,500. They'll have a remaining balance of $10,950.
Okay, questions or comments?
Do we have any target date, Ken, for leveling that over there? Is there a target date?
We're still working on the documents, and we have the utilities parts to move. I can't give you a specific date right now, but I'll try to get one from Walker Partners on when we should be able to do that. I know that TJ is already contracting to, we need to tear down that shed back behind there before we can get some of the work done to get to the full demolition. So
Yeah, and that's correct, Ken. So we've gone ahead and taken down the small pavilion in the back of the yard. So right now we're kind of waiting on Encore to develop their numbers to relocate the power back to the site. So once we have those, I think Jared with Walker Parker Partners can really kind of finalize our package and get us going.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith and I are just curious when we need to bring Advil, because that'll be right out our window. So they could get a little.
That's the bad part. The good part is what you can look out your window and see in the future.
Shoot, I bet they have that thing knocked down quickly.
Yeah.
Bet just push it, right?
Won't be hard.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, need a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, we have nothing under item K this week. Under item L, grants and grant proposals. L1 is our ARPA discussion. L1A is regarding the professional consulting contract with LAN, and this is an invoice number 11, totals $2,175 for their expenses related to water planning through February 17th, and it's been reviewed and recommended for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
L1B is regarding the professional services agreement with BKD, authorization of invoices. There was a billing issue where we didn't receive a couple of bills, plus the most recent one is included. So L1B1 is for their services through November 2022, totals $5,312.06. L1B2 is an invoice through December. It's $12,216.92. And then services through January are under B3, totaling $12,130.03.
Any questions? What's the pleasure of the court?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
L2 is regarding the bipartisan infrastructure law discussion, eligible projects, programs, and got an update from Georgina Ibarra at TLC. They're continuing to look at opportunities. She's looking a lot at broadband right now, and hope to have her back on the March 21st agenda for an update. So no action is needed unless any other questions here.
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know that bipartisan infrastructure law seems to be extremely voluminous when you try to navigate through there. I know she said she was gonna come and kind of give us an overview of exactly what the grant was, how we could benefit, and then bring us specifically the projects that she was looking at submitting. And I could be wrong because I'm just going by what I read. It seems, is it that they're looking for just when it comes to transportation mega projects, or is this grant, I guess the short and sweet of it is it a fit for McLennan County? Are there possibilities for funding through this act?
I think there are some, but I think you're exactly right. Some may be the mega type project, but some of this money is going state directly to the states, and where there may be some breakout type programs where we can see some benefit. But we'll keep working with her and kind of digging through. And Francis, I don't know if you've seen anything different, but that's kind of the way that I've understood it.
Okay. And I guess my question comes, we secured them, and I think I just have a draft copy. When did we secure TLC Engineering?
It would have been back last summer, probably August. Yeah, August of 2022.
Okay, and I know we have projects, because I was looking at two of my main roads kind of in the, well, like Old Mejia and Orchard Lane. And those are roads that, when they were brought to us, the engineer, not Zane, but past engineers have said, well, perhaps maybe, grant funding would be something we would look into, because the strategy had to be, it was going to be costly. because of the big trucks and the landfill. And so we've been waiting around on grant possibilities to fund perhaps putting the asphalt surface on those two extremely major roads. But when I look through this grant, and it talks about if we're going to do anything about like culverts, the culvert program says in order to fix areas that would have exotic fish. So I said, well, I don't really think that's me.
Maybe no. Put some in.
It seems that it's an excellent source of funding. I'm just having a hard time finding how ours fits under this. Maybe we're fishing in the wrong pond. We probably have a really great consultant, but do we need them maybe looking elsewhere? Because now, you know, we spent the last 6 months talking about transportation and then working with Zane. Now I'm hearing they're looking at broadband. So I'm kind of confused because the only thing that we're accessing this grant money for is their contract. How are we funding them? They're coming through ARPA?
No, they'll be awarded a percentage of any grant. And Commissioner, sorry, it's much broader than, this is just under the bipartisan infrastructure law, but it's written and they are actively looking for any available grant. And so she's been actively contacting state agencies, checking for funding. We noticed that same thing you did on the culverts and reached out to her. Reagan did, and Georgina thinks she talked to whichever agency that was. And even though it's worded that way, we were still encouraged to apply, that, you know, there are funds. So, but they are looking much broader. I just brought up broadband because there were a few questions this week. Commissioner Smith had asked, and there were the state had put out the notice for one of the broadband programs. And so everything we're getting grant related, we're just sending it on to her as we're researching it as well, just to put it on her radar. And she had actively been meeting with some of the broadband companies. And so that's just another area they're looking at. So, but it's much broader than just this bipartisan infrastructure bill.
Okay.
Or law.
Okay, that makes it clearer for me. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You're almost at, is it really attainable? I mean, we're chasing this thing, but we never catch it.
Yeah.
But anyway, any other questions or comments? All right, Dustin, let's move on.
All right. L3 is regarding the Heart of Texas Council of Governments, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, FY23 Environmental Development Grant. It's authorization of interlocal agreement for solid waste community collection events. Back in November, we approved this, the submission of the application. The grant has been awarded and totals $12,500 to be split between the precincts for solid waste collection events.
Okay, questions or comments? What's the pleasure of the court?
Motion to approve the.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
L4 is regarding the Texas Community Development Block Grant Program. L4A is recording of grant agreement for Elmont Water Control and Improvement District number 2 sanitary sewer improvements. This is just a recording of that grant agreement with TDA. Grant totals $350,000 and there's a $17,500 match will be covered by the Water Control Improvement District.
Okay. Questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
L4B is discussion and approval of Langford Community Management Services as the grant administrator for TDA Community Development Fund. This is for another grant wastewater improvement project for the unincorporated community of Elmont. Ken?
Yes, we went through the correct steps in selecting the grant administrator for this next go-around. We had to contact at least 3 administrators on an approved list by the state of Texas. And we did that. We only got one response. It was from Langford. We went through the evaluation of their response, and we had to include one elected official, and that would Will Jones. And so we've got that done. I believe we have all the right things done. We just need a signature on the Form A508. That is the final step in the evaluation of the proposals in selecting Langford as the grant administrator.
Anything to add, Commissioner?
Oh, no, this is a good program that, you know, Elmont Water is they're pretty progressive in trying to find this is something that works. So, and it's just a matter of us helping them fill out the paperwork. So,
And ultimately, I think it's for more sewer line replacement and some manholes is what it amounts to.
Okay.
and the roads out there are just really in bad shape. So when we can get the infrastructure underneath fixed, then we'll come in and
Start working on that. Okay.
harden the roads back.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve this, this grant, admin, planning services.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
L5 is regarding the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services Title 4E grant contract, authorization of Title 4E Child Welfare Services claims. Francis?
Yes, so 5A, B, C, and D are all quarterly claims to DTFPS for Title 4E welfare services.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? What's the pleasure of the court?
Move to approve L5B through D.
Second.
That was A through D? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir, A through D.
A through D, I'm sorry, yes, A through D, yes.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
L6 is regarding the Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart Grant, short form of agreement with LAN, authorization of invoice number 11. This invoice totals $13,810 for the services provided by LAN on the Water Marketing Strategy Grant through February 17th, and this will leave about $63,000 left on that agreement.
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Under item M1, 474th District Court, ratification of data services for iPad. Ken?
Yes, of course, we had a request for an iPad for Judge Alan Bennett, and we received in the iPad, and as per our normal procedures, we're connecting it to our data contract. And so we're asking for ratification. We got the data services for $39.99 and also added a hotspot on his iPad for additional $5. The service started on 2/20 of '23.
Okay, questions or comments? What's the pleasure of the court?
Move to ratify.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
M2 is maintenance of buildings, authorization of hotspot request. Ken?
Yes, we had a request from TJ. He has a new member working out at the jail, Raul Rodriguez. He requested a hotspot for Raul. The service charge for that hotspot will be $37.99 per month.
Questions or comments? I need a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
M3, purchasing, authorization of Texas Public Purchasers Association membership request. Ken?
I felt it was time. I've been a longtime member of the Texas Public Purchasing Association. I think last year I requested membership for Cinnamon Alexander. This year I'm also asking for membership for Misty McCowan, who does great work with our day-to-day purchases. Feel like this could be of help for her for the listserv. Also, too, I was thinking about we're going to have a conference, public purchasing conference right here in Waco in May, and by having her join, it's a cheaper rate for her to attend that conference. So I make this request for her.
Any questions, comments? What's the pleasure of the court?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Under item N, additional items, N1 is authorization of text pool resolution amending authorized representatives for the criminal district attorney. This resolution changes the representatives on that account. It adds Josh Teetons, Michelle Simer, Sybil Humphreys, and Jill Smith. And we just need a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
N3 is discussion and or action regarding proposed pending state or federal legislation. And we've just started including some info that commissioners that y'all share with us and other info we see from TAC and CUC. So these will be on the agenda for a while. So if there's anything specific you'd like to discuss, just let us know.
Okay.
So Commissioner, no action necessary today.
Commissioner.
So I had attended the VG Young conference down in College Station, and they had passed out this list of bills, and Ken's HB 1132 raised the bid limit from $50,000 to $100,000 is on there. It has been assigned to a committee, and then my notes. I don't have my notes on here. That was the one that we had. There is HB 1489, which would restrict the use of certificates of obligation. That seems to be kind of that seems to be every session. Those types of bills are coming up. HB 192 limits the authority to restrict firearms to courtrooms instead of the courthouse. This would be a huge expense for the county if we had to put a magnetometer in front of every courtroom, and this would allow people to carry carry their firearms in the hallways of the courts. And so I know there's some work being done on this bill, but it would be. I mean, it would definitely cost the county if we had to do that. And then there's always the SB 175, which has been come up quite a few times in recent sessions. And then there's a couple of documents that were passed out at the Conference of Urban Committees Policy Committee meeting that I attended in January and February about how property taxpayers more and more are bearing the cost that the state imposes, does not pay. Main one of those is jail cost and mental health in the jail, and then always the indigent defense cost, which has been put on county taxpayers, which really should, in essence, be these are state defendants and should be, in my opinion, paid for by the state.
Yes, we used to get a small amount of money, but we used to, it started stair stepping down.
It's a formula grant, and it has gone, our costs go up, and that reimbursement has gone down.
So contact your
state rep
or senator and let them know how you feel. Our opinion goes a long way with it.
Thank you, sir. Dustin, do we need to probably vote on this for recording purposes, or are we good?
Sure, we can record those.
That's some good information, so let's go ahead and put it in the record. I need a motion to approve N3 for recording purposes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, moving on to item N5, discussion and action regarding domain name change and designation of county judge as authorized authority to request and reserve the use of domain name. John?
Good morning again, Commissioners. This request is to reserve the domain name mcclennan.gov to identify us as a government entity. The backup, in case that is not allowed, would be McClellan.tx for Texas.gov. Currently, as you all know, we use .co.mcclennan.tx.us, and that's pretty long. So there are some options here. One of the things this does for us, it becomes more secure as a .gov because only verified government agencies can register a .gov. It will give people more confidence in our domain, especially when you start talking about emails that go out and come in. There's no actual dollar amount attached to this because the .gov registration is free. What we're asking for here is to have the Judge Felton be authorized to send in the official request and sign that request. We would then, as you've seen in the item, we would phase this in over probably 2, possibly 3 years. So for that time, both addresses, both domains, all of those things would still work. So you could send an email, for instance, to .co.mcclennan.tx.us, or you could send it to the mcclennan.gov. And that would allow us also time to use up any printed material, so we weren't wasting funds, reprinting stuff and wasting things that weren't used. It's really a win-win. I don't see a real downside to this at all. And with that, I would take questions.
I had two. I remember prior to our having the the domain that ends, the current one we have, the tx.us, we had a different one. I don't know if it was GOV. And so I'm trying to think, we were told we had to change it for some reason. And I really would like to get an understanding of why we changed it to what we have now. And then will this affect the email addresses? Because all of our emails end with this co.mcclennan.tx.us.
Yes, so as you know, I just started this year. I could not really speak to why you were moved to .co.mcclennan.tx.us per se. This move, not mandated, there's no urgency or requirement here. It's meant to, first of all, shorten all the email addresses and domains that folks have to type in and remember. It's also to give it more authority as a .gov so that people recognize a .gov as a government entity. And as far as the emails go, as I said, we can use both of those. So for instance, it would be your Patricia Miller at .co.mcclennan.tx.us, that would work. And also Patricia Miller at mcclennan.gov would work. So they would work simultaneously. And we plan to retain that .tx.us domain indefinitely. There's no reason to get rid of that either. So that things will still work, down the road when folks who are used to the old address would type that in.
I guess for me, because I'm not saying I don't want to do the move just because this is what we just have done. That's not what I'm saying. I really want to get an understanding of why we were moved to this in the first place before we do another big, huge move to something different. Because there was a long discussion. There was a rational reason why we had to move to this co.mcclennan.tx.us. I want to say we did have .gov, but there was a reason, and you have some people in your department who were there when we had these initial discussions. I believe David and Chiquinta were there at the time. Rhoda, even if she's still here, was there. I just want to get an understanding of why we were told to move to it then before we do another big drastic changeover now.
Yes, ma'am. I can get with them and see. Now, they've been in on these discussions and they have not mentioned any issue, but I will get with them and get back with you.
Okay, would y'all like to defer this today?
I would.
Yes, you can defer. Again, there's no urgency to this at all.
Okay.
I would make a motion to defer.
Yes, ma'am. You have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
N6, authorization of designation of emergency management director for review of mass gathering application permit pursuant to the Texas Health and Safety Code. So for the rowing event to take place at Trading House, a mass gathering permit is required. And under the Mass Gathering Act, the county judge holds a hearing on that application. And under the Texas Health and Safety Code, the application is sent to the county health authority, the county fire marshal, or the person designated under the section, and the sheriff. Since we do not have a county fire marshal, we recommend that the court designate Elizabeth Thomas, emergency management director, as the person to act in that capacity.
Okay. Questions? What's the pleasure of the court?
I would move that we approve Elizabeth Thomas to serve in that capacity.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
N7 is discussion and/or action regarding salary grievance committee member selection process. As the court remembers, these past several years, we've had trouble getting the 9 public members of the committee. And under the local government code, there's actually the committee is set as the county judge, sheriff, county tax assessor collector, county treasurer, county clerk, district clerk, county attorney, or criminal district attorney, and the number of public members necessary to provide 9 voting members. County judge is not entitled to vote, so that leaves 6 elected officials. And we would need 3 members of the public, and then also looking at having 3 alternates. We think, visiting with the county clerk's office, our office feels like this is the best way to go. I know we had some of these discussions last year in court. We've done it the other way for so long, though, that we think we actually need a record vote if the court is willing to move to this process. So I guess what we're looking for today would be a motion to use the salary grievance committee provided under 152.014A1.
Okay. Any questions or comments? If we approve this, Mercedes and I are very appreciative of that, so we don't have to read 70 names to come down with. What's the pleasure of the court?
Move to approve the recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
N8 is discussion and/or action regarding discretionary exemption from bidding for HART voting machine supplies. Ken?
It recently came to our attention that we're spending more on supplies for the voting machines than we have in the past, and it's items that are not covered under a cooperative agreement or state contract. So we want to bring to the court and formally present discretionary exemption from the court that would fall under sections 262.024(7)A, items for which competition is precluded because of the existence of patents, copyrights, secret processes, or monopolies, and/or section 262.024(7)D, captive replacement parts or components for equipment. Example of one of the items that's not covered is the ballots, the paper ballots. This year, we may not exceed that bid limit, but we're trying to be a little bit proactive and initiate this going forward, and so that the purchasing department requests from the court a discretionary exemption for expendable supplies for the HART voting machines.
Anyone have questions, comments?
Okay, when you say supplies, because you note ballots, this is just like office supplies, toner and cartridges
Yes,
like that?
ink and
Okay.
all those things that we would be buying that's just not covered by any process that we see.
What's the pleasure of the court?
Move to approve the discretionary exemption from bidding for the HART voting machine supplies.
Okay.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We have nothing under item O this week. Under item P, McLennan County Venue Project. P1s regarding the construction manager at risk agreement with John W. Irwin General Contractor. P1A is authorization of application and certificate for payment number 3. This is for the Area B demolition project. This pay app totals $663,483. And you see in the packet what was included in that work. Walker Partners has reviewed, and Ken, myself, and TJ have reviewed this as well as recommended for payment.
What does that leave?
That would leave, that's a good question. Total proposal was $888,000. There is some retainage that's still left. Let me jump over to the actual invoice. Or the actual payout. So balance to finish, including retainage, is $88,943.
Okay. We're getting close. Getting close.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is this the time just to bring up that I think that it's been brought up, maybe some more work may be requested?
No, it's not the time.
No. Requested by who?
It would be by Wes and the fair for some additional.
Well, it's not on the agenda, so let's
Oh,
go on.
And,
never mind.
and it would be outside the scope of what we've already started doing, correct? So-
Right.
Yes, it would.
Yeah. Okay. So forget what you heard right there, right?
Okay.
What's the pleasure of the court?
Move to approve the application and certificate for payment.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
P2 is regarding the Area B demolition project, professional civil engineering services proposal with Walker Partners. This invoice totals $1,500 for their construction administration services, and the balance remaining on this, which totaled $24,000, will be $620.
Okay, any questions or comments? What's the pleasure of the court?
Move to approve the invoice for Walker Partners.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item Q, McLennan County Radio Tower Project. Q1 is regarding the system purchase agreement with Motorola Solutions, ratification of change order number 7. This just extends the contract project end date from March 31st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023. And it's due to those delays that we discussed before with the state on Road and Bridge Precinct 3.
Gotcha. Okay. Does anyone have questions or comments? Need a motion to ratify the change order.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second.
Whatever.
Any further? That's good timing, fellas. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there anything
That's-
that we missed? Does that cover it?
Commissioner, that should be all the action items. We do need to go into executive session quickly, if that's okay.
Okay, under,
551.074 regarding personnel matters.
personnel matters. Okay, and
And-
who's in and who's out?
Myself, Mike, Francis, and I know Anna had to step away. I don't think she's back. So it can just be me, Mike, and Francis, please.
Okay,
Can we take maybe a 2-minute break?
yes, let's do this right quickly. Show us an executive session at 11:52 under the section that our county administrator mentioned, and the personnel that he also mentioned will be in with us. With that being said, we'll recess for 5 minutes.
Recording in progress.
Okay, Dustin, everyone's back in?
Yes, sir. And we have no video from the courtroom. If we could just get that turned back on before.
Okay,
There we go.
we're on. Okay. Show the court out of executive session at 12:18. There's to be no action taken. Is there anything further to come before the court? Okay, if not, we adjourn at 12:19.